Alright, so in the previous video, we briefly went through forks in one of the sections. Let's actually go a little deeper in this video. So if you want to contribute to an existing project for which you do not have write access, you can fork the project. When you fork a project, GitHub will make a copy of the project that is entirely yours. It lives in your namespace, and you can then push your changes to it. This does not mean you cannot fork projects to which you have write access. It actually depends on the workflow structure that an organization follows. Some of these organizations have a very strict review process embedded in their pipeline, so they expect engineers to fork the repository first instead of directly cloning it. Due to this fork feature, project maintainers don't have to worry about adding users as collaborators to give them write access. People can fork a project, push to it, and contribute their changes back to the original repository by creating what's called a pull request. This opens up a discussion thread with code review, and the owner and the contributor can then communicate about the change until the owner is happy with it, at which point the owner can merge it. So we have this starter project from the previous video. At the top, you'll see the fork option. Get an option to edit the name and the description of this fork. Let's keep it unchanged. For the most part, you'll only need the main branch of the repository, so we'll keep this option checked. Now, if I click on this button, you'll find your own writable copy of this repository. Now you can clone this fork just like we did in the previous video. So I'll copy the URL. I'll move out of this directory, and inside here I'll clone it. This is exactly what we did in the previous video when we cloned the repository. The only difference is that this time we have cloned our own copy of the original repository. The original repository will be unaffected to any changes that we make to this fork. Alright, let's come back to pull requests. So GitHub essentially has a particular collaboration workflow that's centered around pull requests. Here's how it generally works. You start by forking a project that you want to collaborate on. Then you create a topic branch from the master branch. So a topic branch is basically a short-lived branch that you normally create for a particular feature. You then make some changes in this branch to improve the project. This branch then gets pushed to your fork. Now you open a pull request on GitHub. This pull request will compare two branches between the remotes, so you need to choose them carefully. So it basically compares one branch from your fork, normally the one that you made changes to, with another branch from the main repository. So the goal is to merge these new changes that are currently present inside your fork in a branch that is present inside the main repository. Once the pull request has been opened, collaborators and team members can review and discuss the impact of the change and if there can be any improvements. This discussion happens on the pull request itself. The best part about this is that if there is a change that needs to be made, you need not create a separate pull request after you make the change. The commit will be added to the same pull request. The project owner now will merge the changes. In the end, you sync up the updated master branch from the main remote with your fork's master. The reason why you need to sync up is because the changes that you had made were inside a topic branch in your fork. It never got merged to the master branch in your fork. It only got merged to the master branch in the main repository. So you need to sync up the main repository's master branch with your fork's master branch. This may definitely feel overwhelming at the beginning, but once you start repeating the steps, it quickly turns into muscle memory. One drawback that I feel when using this flow is that even for a small change, there's a huge waiting period for it to go to production. It can become a blocker for you every now and then, but that's something you just have to accept and move on. Now that we've seen what the flow looks like, let's actually run through it once. The first step was to fork the project, which we've already done. We also have cloned it locally. We now have to add something to this repository. Let's say you thought of a feature that would be great for everyone else who will be using this project. So let's add that feature. I'll be creating a separate branch for this feature, so git checkout. let's just add a file. So now the code obviously doesn't matter in this example. I just want to show you the flow that we have discussed just minutes ago. So just imagine that this is a super important feature. Now we'll need to push this to the repository. So git add, git commit. Okay, so this is committed. Let's push it to our remote. So git push origin. As I had mentioned in the previous video, whenever you clone a repository, the short name for the remote is set to origin by default. So git push origin, and the name of the branch would be main. Actually, the name of the branch should not be main, it should be feature branch. So git push origin feature branch. Okay, so the reason why I was not able to push here because I was logged in through a different GitHub account. You should be able to push your changes without any issues. Okay, so all these steps that you saw up until now, we've already seen them in the previous videos. Now comes the new part. If you see the main remote from which you had forked your own version, it does not have this new feature or even the branch for that matter. It's unaffected by any commits that you have made. The commits that you have made actually made changes inside this repository. So if I reload this, you can find a new branch here. And inside the branch, you'll also find the feature file. Now you want everyone to use this feature, but they'll be referring to the main remote and not your version. I mean, they can refer to your version, but as I mentioned earlier, the main remote is a single source of truth. So any feature or bug fix should be present on this main remote as everyone's going to refer to it. Now you also see this disclaimer here saying that the feature branch has some recent changes and this button here which lets you compare and create a pull request. What exactly are we comparing? Let's take a look. I'll click on this button. So it's comparing branches between two remotes. You can see here that the first remote is the main project and this is my fork. The feature branch that we just created here, it's comparing it with the main branch of the main remote. And based on the comparison, it has found that there's only one file change with a console log statement. So now I know between these two branches, only this piece of code is what's different. The main branch is missing this piece of code. Now ideally, you should write a solid description stating the reason why you're raising this pull request and what impact it's going to make. It's better to be somewhat descriptive so that reviewers who will be looking at this pull request will have an easier time understanding what the change is going to achieve. I'll add some dummy text for now and create this request. Now this thread gets opened up in which collaborators and reviewers can comment on the changes. Since this project is also created by me from a different account, I'll switch to that account. Do not get confused by this. Up until now, I was the contributor who wanted to contribute to a project. So this was the account that I was working up until now. You can see the logo at the top here. Now I've switched roles. Now I'm the owner of the main project to which the contribution was made. So I can actually see a pull request here. If I click on this, I can see the request that I made from the contributor account. So I'll click on this pull request. Now I as a reviewer will check what commits were made. So I can see here what all commits were made, new feature added. In the commits tab, again, I'll be able to see the commits. I can also see the files changed in this commit. And based on these observations, I'll come to a conclusion whether it's okay to merge this with my project. Now, let's say I'm happy with the feature, but want one thing to be changed in the feature. I can simply drop a comment mentioning the change. So I'll go back to the conversation section. And over here, I'll simply leave a comment saying that I like the feature. Please make a small change. You can see here that the comment was added. So now I'll switch back to the contributor account. So you can see here that I'm on the contributor account now. I'll be able to see this message given by the owner of the project. I also get a notification anytime someone makes a comment in this pull request. So yeah, now I know that the owner wants me to change something. So I now need to make that change. So let's again go back to VS Code and let's make a change in the file. Console log change added. Now once I made the change, I again need to commit this. So git commit. I'll then push it to the feature branch. So git push origin feature branch. This is the best part about pull requests. Since branches are compared in a pull request, you can commit several times and keep the same pull request open. It's all going to be included in the same request. So here you can see that a new commit has been added and it's still the same pull request. I didn't have to create a new request just because I had to make changes to my code base. Now I, the contributor, will leave a message saying that I've made the change and also tag the reviewer so that they can review it again. So I'll leave a comment here. The reviewer is the second account and I just put in a message saying that I've made the change. Now I'll switch to the owner's account so I can find the new commit and also the new message added by the contributor. Since now I'm happy with the change, I'll merge this pull request. So I can click on this button. I'll confirm the merge. Now inside the code, I'll be able to see the new feature file. This is typically how an engineer makes a contribution to a remote repository. Even in the case of open source projects, you'd see a similar flow. Now on the contributor's end, you need to clean up a few things. If you are planning to contribute to this project again, you need to sync this main branch with the folks main branch. To do that, let's go back to the terminal. We'll check out to the main branch. So git checkout main. Now we need to pull the changes from the main remote's main branch in this folks main branch. So git pull, and I need to copy the URL of the main remote. Now we have all the changes from the main remote's main branch to this local repository's main branch. The only thing that's left is to push it to our remote. So git push origin main. And now if I go back to the main branch and reload this, you'll be able to see the feature file as well. And now our fork is in sync with the main remote. This can tend to get a little tedious, as in to use the URL every time we want to sync our changes. So let's just add the main remote to our remotes list. Git remote add, and I'll call the main remote as startup project main. Now I need to pass the URL. If I now press enter and check my remotes list, I have origin which is set to the fork, and SP main or startup project main is set to the main remote. So now instead of adding the URL every time, you can use the remote instead. So instead of doing git pull and the URL, you can just do git pull SP main. And that's about it for this video. This is probably the most important video in this series. The workflow that we just went through is what you'll be dealing with for the most part. Make sure to watch it multiple times if you're confused at any point. If you have any doubts or suggestions, you can put them in the comments. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one.